Hey guys, welcome back to the layout. Today we are working on a couple things on the workbench, and what we're doing is putting some decals on some of these Otter Valley trash cars. Here, let's shut a light off and get some of the glare out of here. So we're working on freelance road of waste disposal service, and just kind of playing with decals on two different cars. The ribs are bigger than I anticipated, so we got a little bit of work trying to cut the decals and get them on to make them look right. So we're working on that, and we've still got an engine torque part we're working on. I've just got to finish up lights on that, and then that will be done. But what we're mainly working on today is we're building our own, or my own custom rock mold. And what we're doing is using the Woodland Scenics rock molds. Here there's two of them. But we're using latex rubber over that to create a longer mold, and we'll be using that along the edge of the layout here. So what we're going to do today is there's about 4 coats of latex rubber on there now. What we're going to do is add cheesecloth onto that and another coat of latex rubber, and what that'll do is start to strengthen that latex rubber so that it doesn't want to tear as easy. We'll do that. We'll put about 3 more coats of latex rubber on top of that cheesecloth, and then another final layer of cheesecloth. So we'll be another 2 weeks with this. Get about 1 coat every 2 days, just for dry time to get this latex rubber to cure properly so that it's rubber and not mush. And that's what we're working on. We've also added a couple more rock molds. I'm getting really good at growing rock molds, I'll tell you that much. This one, we've put a hole in it, and we've got a building that'll go on there. I've got to build a new base for that, just because that rock mold is on a slope. But modeling Northern Ontario, most of the buildings that were built out where this area is are built on rocks, and they're just kind of sitting up on rocks. So we'll jump right in and get this latex rubber on, and we'll show you what that's about. So I do apologize, the lighting isn't the greatest in here. But what we're going to do is we're going to shake this latex rubber out, and we're just going to kind of glop it out of the jar onto where we're working. Do make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area for this, because it is pretty powerful stuff. So yeah, I'm using a foam brush. I've used this right from the start of the project, and it is getting pretty tired now. But we just kind of want a thin coat of this, and we're going to go all the way to the edges of this, and you're just going to kind of dab it on. It's not really a product that you can paint with. It's more of a glob it on and hope for the best kind of project. Just because you're working with latex, you can see how you can move it around. You've already got a latex base from your previous coats, so your latex will stick to that, but when you let it set, it'll stick to that. If you brush it around, it just wants to brush off of that latex. It doesn't really want to grab onto anything. So we're just going to kind of brush this around. We're going to cover everything that's been covered in latex before. And you don't want it on there too thick, because it does take longer to dry. But any of the low spots or any of the high spots that you have to kind of smooth this out, you can see if you're kind of gentle with your brush, you can smooth out this latex. But it is pretty gentle stuff. So what you're doing is you're looking for any spots that maybe don't have the coverage. The first couple times, the high spots of your rock molds take a little bit extra to cover. You're just kind of making sure you've got even coverage all the way along. You're going to get some more latex out. And you can see it's kind of a thicker, pasty-like material. And we'll just work this over down here. This rock mold goes over the edge, and we need that for doing our molds. And what this mold is going to be custom built for where I need it on the layout, so I need that edge, and what that does is that'll be able to hold a little bit of the rock, or a little bit of your plaster when you put it on. it'll just let that rock mold hold a little bit and have some capacity. Otherwise, your mold would be perfectly flat and it's tough to get any hydrocal or anything to stay on that mold and have that rock have any thickness to it. And you just keep brushing this around all the way across your mold. And now you kind of take the Bob Ross approach of, we just have happy little accidents. We don't ever have mistakes. So we've had a few here that this latex rubber gets on a little bit thick and runs off your rock mold onto the grass. All that does is it just gives you a lip on your rock mold. It's not really a mistake, it's a happy little accident. Now we'll just go in, and we're a little bit thick right there in the middle, and we'll bring some of that down to here, and we'll just kind of brush this thinness in and fill all those streaks up. And we'll go in like that, and we're going to need just a little bit more latex to finish. Like that. So we're going to make sure you do this in a well-ventilated area. I've got a window open in here. I don't have the fan on right now, but I do at least have a window cracked in here so I can bring a little bit of fresh air in. And once we're done with the video, we'll put a fan on to kind of blow this around, but I also don't plan on working in here much more today. It is lunchtime, so this will be done for a while, and it can sit for a couple hours and off gas. So now that we got that done, we're going to put our lid back in our latex to keep that. And now this can is about 3/4 empty, so I do expect this to take another part of a can to do everything we need to do. And we're going to put our paintbrush up there. And we've got our cheesecloth open, and this is just dollar store cheesecloth, and it's just a fine mesh. And we're going to go in and we're just going to put one layer in, cut it with a knife, cut it with scissors, and this is doubled up. So we are going to get 2 layers with it when we do this, but it is, that's okay. All that's going to do is give us a little bit extra strength. So now what we can do, we got our cheesecloth cut to length. And what we'll do is we'll fold that in half, and it's going to be a little bit long, and that's okay. And what we're going to do is we're just going to place that on that mold, and you're just going to gently tap it in. You're going to get a little bit on your hands. You can put rubber gloves on if you want for this, but you're just going to gently press that into that latex. You're going to make sure you get it to fold over. If you've got a seam in it or a crease like I do right here, that folds over and goes down vertical, you're going to make sure you get that all in nice and tight. Anywhere you've got a divot in it. So now this is 4 layers thick because it's folded in half and it was doubled up when we cut it. So you're going to mat that in nicely. And you're going to let that dry. And when we get all done, we're going to dump another layer of latex rubber on that, and we're going to start brushing it on here. We'll trim off our extra cheesecloth once our molds are done. We can trim that off if that cheesecloth hangs out the edge. That's not the end of the world. Now you can do this 1 layer at a time if you want. You can trim this right down so it fits perfectly. There's multiple ways to do this. You can just do 1 thin layer at a time and add more latex rubber. You can do a couple layers. I want to do a couple layers. I might just do this layer. This might be it. And once we get this covered with latex rubber, we'll be done. But there is different ways of doing this. There is no right or wrong way. And again, anywhere that latex right here, we roll over the edge. We want to make sure we're pressed in nice there. And you just firmly but gently press it in. The nice thing being 4 layers thick. I don't have any on my fingers. You've just got that kind of residue, but you don't have any stuck to you. Again, gloves are an option. There, and we'll do that. So now we'll come back to that in a couple days when this is ready to have another layer of rubber put on it. Okay guys, we're back. a couple days later, and that latex rubber is hardened up and it's got our cheesecloth bound in. So we're back with putting another coat of latex rubber on top of this cheesecloth now. So as you can see, it's going to be a little bit of a thicker coat this time, and it's just because we've got to work it into that mesh now. So that'll use up quite a bit of the latex. And we're just going to go around and we're going to work that all into that mesh, making sure we reach it all and that we've got really good coverage all the way across that. So you can see we've got a really thin coat pushed into that cheesecloth, and then also just sitting on top of that cheesecloth, so it'll give us something for the next layer to bite onto. So we'll let that dry, and we'll come back to this in another couple days. We also went away for the weekend and stopped by Pete's Trains in London, Ontario. And I always like supporting the guys that'll keep a brick and mortar store open. It's nice to walk in and browse around and see what you want. So mostly picked up some scenery stuff, a lot of the coarse turf, some of the fine earth turf, and whatever else we could come up with. Some lichen autumn mix and some light green, some Woodland Scenics water. And then they had 3 of these Bowser ballast cars in O&R paint, and you can't model Northern Ontario without having some O&R floating around, so we got 3 different road numbers there. Also picked up some Scene Masters sitting passengers, so the plan is I've got a whole bunch of passenger cars. We'll start pulling those apart and putting some people in them. And then also picked up some Junco detail parts. So these are the push brooms, or like a regular broom, so these will go on engines for sweeping out switches. Also got a package of scoop shovels, and then some push brooms that you'll see on the Ordock and around other businesses. So just kind of fun little trip, and then supporting local shop that their prices are fairly good on stuff. So we'll catch you next time, and hopefully we've got some more progress on this for you guys to see. Thanks for watching. Okay guys, we're back. We've got our mold hardened up and finished. So now we're just going to work on peeling that off, and we're just going to try and get under a corner of it. you want to make sure you go right down to the very first layer you put on. And I'm just kind of double checking as I'm pulling up to make sure that I'm down to the base, that the layers aren't separating. What you're going to do is you're just going to work underneath of it with your fingers. You're not really going to pull, you're just going to keep working your fingers under. So this edge is coming up easier for a little bit, so we're going to work there where we can get a pull on it. And a little bit of lifting. And we're just going to keep going around very gently with your thumbs underneath and just lifting a little bit at a time before you move on to where you can feel the mold being stuck somewhere else. So as we go, we come up along this top edge. And then what we'll do is we'll keep sliding our fingers under, down to the bottom here, just prying ever so slightly. And you can hear that mold releasing. And we just keep working our way. You're going to lose a little bit along your edges, that if it was only one coat, it'll be too thin and not have enough strength to hang on. It'll tear a little bit just right where it lipped over the rock or something. And this one's doing that. That's okay. We've kind of anticipated that. So we've got a spot here. So right here, the runoff run all the way down to the tracks. We got to do a little bit of ripping and tearing. And so here you can see we've got an undercut. We've just got to be careful when that peels off of there, that we don't pull our mold because of this lip right here, that we don't pull our mold out from under it and rip our mold. So you can see it's kind of a tedious job getting the mold off of here the first time. There we go. And there's our finished mold. So you can see it did pick up some of the color from the rocks that I had started to stain a little bit. And there is a little bit of plaster tucked into crevices like this. We can go ahead and you can pick those out with your fingernails. There's a chance that that's maybe in there for a reason, that it's going to continue to break that little bit of plaster off if it was a fine crack sticking up and got wedged in the rubber. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the sink. We're going to rinse it all out, soap it up really good, and then we're going to pour a mold with it. So you can see here that the cheesecloth did overhang the original mold where I didn't trim it, and then the top we covered it. What we might do is we might fill this seam in right here with more latex rubber just to stiffen that up, and the same thing here, just to stiffen that cheesecloth up a little bit. And you can see how it is separated just a touch. So 2 layers of latex rubber right along that edge. It won't be a good mold, it'll just be a smooth surface, but it'll stiffen that mold up and bind it all together really good. But that is how you make a latex mold of a rock. So I figured I'd show you guys a use of this mold and how I do it. This is by no means the right way, this is just what I do. So I use carving plaster. I find it easier to work with, and just when the rocks don't quite go where you want them, you can work with the carving plaster. So the first thing I do is you spray your mold with soapy water, and what that does is it helps your carving plaster work into all these little cracks, and without really necessarily sticking to that mold. You want it to find all the little cracks and crevices and everything, so you kind of work it in, kind of like cake batter, and that's about the consistency I have this. And the reason I have this, as you'll notice, is we're working upside down to what the mold is right now. The reason I do that is I mold all of my rocks in place. So I don't make my rocks flat and then put them on the layout. I make my layout and then mold my rocks to suit where I want them on the layout. That way they're a perfect fit. It looks natural that the rocks are there. They're not a forced flat shape and you have to fill in around them. I just think it's a better look overall. So then what we do, I've got a little bit extra, and we're going to be working on the edge of the layout right here. I know it's tough to see, I've got blocks in the way. What we'll do is I know I've got to fill in spots, so we're going to spray some soapy water. Same thing, you're getting that surface wet. Plaster does not bond to a dry surface, and there's days it doesn't bond to a wet surface either. But we're scraping some of that extra plaster into spots that I know the rock mold is going to struggle to have enough plaster in the mold to fill in where it needs to go. And you'll notice that rock mold is just sitting over there full of plaster. The reason for that is we're trying to let that plaster firm up a little bit in the mold before we do kind of the unthinkable. And I'll be honest, I've never done a mold this big. So I come in, what I do is I line it up where I want. You get your hands underneath of it. You kind of position where you think you're going to want that mold, and I want it right about there with the bottom edge. And you do a 1, 2, 3, and you flip it over and lay it in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use all these steel blocks as counterweights. And I've got plastic underneath of this mold on the floor because you are going to drip plaster when you're molding this close to the edge. You're going to drip onto the floor inevitably with plaster. And this is why we use carving plaster. I can come under now and stiffen that edge up. So as you can see, we've got the edge and there is plaster weeping out like there. We'll come in, that'll firm up a little bit, and we'll work that back to that mold edge a little bit. But you are going to drip some plaster out of here. We've got it in as tight as we can with steel blocks. So we'll let that set up for about 20 minutes, and then we'll pull that mold off, and we'll have a rock mold, hopefully, along the edge of the layout there.